My mom stood just 6 feet away when my fiancé's father said she smelled like bleach and that his family couldn't be seen with her. It was my college graduation day. She was wearing the only nice dress she owned, the one she had ironed at 4 in the morning so she could watch me walk across that stage. And this man who had never scrubbed a floor in his life, looked at the woman who raised me and treated her like a stain he wanted wiped away. I didn't say a word that day. I simply took my mom's hand and walked out. But in that parking lot, I made a promise to myself. It took me 10 years to keep it. And when I finally did, it made national news. My name is Morgan Bowen. I'm 32. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me take you back. When I was a little girl, the first thing I noticed about my mom every evening wasn't her face. It was her hands, red, cracked at the knuckles, the skin around her nails peeling from years of industrial cleaners. No amount of lotion could repair what 8 hours a day of bleach and bathroom disinfectant did to a person's skin. My mom, Maria Bowen, left our apartment at 5 every morning and returned home at 7 every night. In between, she cleaned hotel rooms at the Greystone Inn, a boutique property in our small town where wealthy families hosted anniversary dinners and business retreats. She had been doing it since before I was born. I never once heard her complain. When I asked if she was tired, she would hold up those cracked hands and say, "This job puts food on your table and a roof over your head. That's enough." And she meant it. My mom didn't do self-pity. She did the work. The only time I ever saw her cry was the afternoon I came home with my college acceptance letter. She sat at the kitchen table, read it twice, pressed it to her chest, and broke down. I had never seen her shoulders shake like that. When she finally looked up, her eyes swollen, she whispered, "You go where I couldn't." That's the deal. You see, my mom had wanted to go to college. She had the grades, but she got pregnant with me at 20. And that was the end of that dream. She chose me. Every cracked knuckle, every 16-hour holiday shift, every morning she dragged herself out of bed before dawn, she chose me. And I carried that with me into everything I did afterward. Everything. Now, let me tell you about the Greystone Inn because it matters. It was a 3-story stone building right off Main Street, ivy climbing its walls, copper lanterns glowing by the front door, the kind of place that looked like money even from the parking lot. Inside, the lobby had marble floors and a grand piano no one ever played. The restaurant served overpriced steaks to the country club crowd every Friday night. My mom knew that building better than the architects who designed it. She knew which rooms had a draft under the bathroom door. She knew the third-floor hallway carpet had a stain under the runner that no one could remove. She knew the supply closet on the second floor stuck in the summer heat and you had to hip-check it just right. 30 years of knowledge, all stored in her body and her bones. She used to share little stories with me. The guest in room 214 who left a $20 tip every Christmas, the only regular who did, or the couple who checked in crying and checked out holding hands. She noticed people. She just never got noticed in return. The Greystone was the center of social life in our town. If you mattered, you had dinner there. If you were somebody, you booked the terrace for your daughter's engagement party. And if you cleaned the toilets before those parties, you used the service entrance and stayed invisible. My mom walked through that lobby 10,000 times in her life, always pushing a housekeeping cart, always in uniform, never once sitting in one of those leather chairs by the fireplace. Even as a kid, I remember thinking, that's not right. She built the comfort everyone else enjoyed, yet nobody even knew her name. I didn't know then that I would one day walk back through that lobby, but not as a visitor. I met Kyle Ashford in my sophomore year of college. He was charming in that easy, effortless way some people are, quick laugh, warm eyes, the kind of guy who remembered your coffee order. We fell hard and fast. By junior year, we were talking about a future together. Kyle's family was different. His father, Gerald Ashford, owned a mid-sized construction company. His mother, Pamela, chaired the garden club and organized the annual charity gala. They lived in a 4-bedroom colonial on the north side of town, the side with the good schools and the long driveways. The first time I had dinner at their house, Gerald asked me exactly one question. "What does your father do?" I told him my dad had passed away when I was 6 and that my mom worked in housekeeping at a hotel. The table went quiet, not the polite kind of quiet, but the kind where someone has just tracked mud onto a white carpet. Gerald didn't say another word to me that night. Pamela smiled and said, "How lovely," then quickly changed the subject to Kyle's cousin's law school acceptance. On the drive home, Kyle squeezed my hand. "They'll come around," he said. I wanted to believe him. A week later, I stopped by Kyle's place to pick up a jacket I'd left. The front door was cracked open. I could hear Gerald's voice from the kitchen, clear as a church bell. "A hotel maid's daughter. Interesting choice, son. I thought we raised you to aim higher." I stood on the porch for about 10 seconds, then turned around and drove home. When Kyle texted that night, I didn't mention it. I told myself he wasn't his father. I told myself people could be different from their parents. I was half right. Over the next year, a pattern settled in like bad weather. Pamela Ashford had a talent for forgetting. She'd forget to mention the family's Thanksgiving gathering until the morning of. She'd forget to include me on the guest list for Gerald's birthday dinner. And when I did show up, she'd introduce me as Kyle's friend, never fiancé, never even girlfriend, just friend, like someone he carpooled with. Gerald was simpler. He didn't bother pretending. At family events, he'd shake hands with everyone in the room and skip me like I was a coat rack. If I spoke at dinner, he'd look past me and direct his response to Kyle. I was invisible to him, not even worth the effort of being rude. The hardest part wasn't Gerald. The hardest part was Kyle. Every time something happened, every forgotten invitation, every cold introduction, every time Gerald looked through me like glass, I'd bring it up in the car on the way home. And every time Kyle would say the same thing, "I'll talk to them." He never did. I gave him chance after chance. I told myself that loving someone means being patient with their family. I told myself he was caught in the middle. I told myself it would get better once we were married and they saw the life we built. But the truth is, Kyle wasn't caught in the middle. He had picked a side. He just didn't have the courage to say it out loud. I didn't see it then. I was 21 in love and I wanted so badly for it to work. So I swallowed it. Dinner after dinner, slight after slight, I kept swallowing. And then came graduation day, the day everything changed. My mom woke up at 4 that morning. I know because I heard the iron going through the bedroom wall, that careful, steady rhythm of someone pressing the only nice dress she owned. It was a floral print dress she'd bought at a thrift store years ago, navy blue with little white flowers. She had been saving it for a day that mattered. By 6, she was standing in front of the bathroom mirror doing her makeup with the kind of concentration she usually reserved for checking a room before inspection. She wasn't great at it. Her eyeliner was a little uneven, her lipstick a shade too pink, but she was trying. God, she was trying. I came out of my room in my cap and gown, and she just stood there in the hallway clutching this old film camera she'd had since the 90s, not a smartphone. She didn't own one. A real camera with actual film in it. She raised it and snapped a picture before I could even pose. "That one's for the fridge," she said. She looked so proud. Her back was straight. Her chin was up. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't look tired. She looked like someone who had just finished a 30-year marathon and was finally crossing the finish line. Kyle called on the way to campus. His parents were coming to the ceremony. "They want to be there," he said, "to support us." I should have known better. The Ashfords didn't show up anywhere to support anyone but themselves. Gerald saw graduation as networking. Pamela saw it as an occasion to wear a new hat. But I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that on this day, my mom's day, really, everyone would just behave. I should have known better. The ceremony was outside on the main quad. Rows and rows of white folding chairs, a wooden stage up front, banners with the school colors snapping in the breeze. There were maybe 500 people in the audience. Families with balloons, dads with camcorders, grandmothers fanning themselves in the May heat. From the stage, I could see my mom in the third row center section. She was sitting with her camera in her lap, wearing her navy floral dress, looking around with wide eyes like she'd never been to anything this big before, because she hadn't. Then I spotted them. Gerald and Pamela arrived late, the way people with money always do, like the event doesn't really begin until they're seated. An usher led them down the center aisle to 2 empty chairs right next to my mother. I watched Gerald look at the seat, then at my mother. He took in the thrift store dress, the drugstore makeup, the old camera. I could see his jaw tighten even from 50 feet away. He leaned toward Pamela and said something behind his hand. Pamela's face changed. Corners of her mouth pulled down like she'd smelled something sour. She reached for her chair and slid it about 8 inches to the right, angling her body away from my mom. People in the surrounding rows noticed. A woman behind them glanced at her husband. A man 2 seats over looked at Gerald, then at Maria, trying to figure out what was happening. My mom noticed too. I saw it in her shoulders, the way they pulled in just slightly like she was trying to take up less space. She gripped her camera a little tighter and stared straight ahead at the stage. My stomach dropped, but I was in line. There was nothing I could do. Not yet. After the ceremony, I pushed through the crowd to find my mom. She was standing near the east gate, holding her camera with both hands, waiting for me with that same proud smile from the morning. I ran to her. She pulled me into a hug so tight I could feel the bones in her arms. She smelled like the lavender lotion she put on after every shift, the cheap kind from the dollar store that was supposed to cover the bleach but never quite did. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. So proud. Gerald and Pamela were standing maybe 6 feet away with Kyle. Gerald had his sunglasses on top of his head. Pamela was holding a gift bag. Kyle was smiling at me, that half-guilty, half-relieved smile he always wore around his parents. Then Gerald leaned toward Kyle. He didn't whisper. He spoke at a volume that made it perfectly clear he wanted to be heard. "Your mother smells like bleach. We can't be seen with this." My mom's hands went still on my back. Pamela added without even looking in our direction, "Maybe next time she can wait in the car." The air around us went dead. A family standing nearby stopped mid-conversation and turned. Someone behind Gerald inhaled sharply. Kyle stood there, mouth slightly open, eyes on the ground, and said absolutely nothing. My mom slowly let go of me. She lowered her camera. She looked at the grass, and I saw it, this tiny flicker across her face like a candle being pinched out. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't shocked. She had heard things like that before, from guests, from managers, from people who thought she was furniture. And that was worse. The fact that she wasn't even surprised, that was the thing that broke me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't lunge at Gerald or make a scene in front of 500 people. Not because I didn't want to. I wanted to light the world on fire. But my mom was standing right there in her thrift store dress on the one day that was supposed to be hers. I wasn't going to turn her proudest moment into a spectacle. So I did the only thing I could think of. I took her hand. "We're leaving, Mom." She started to protest. "Honey, it's your day. We're leaving." I walked her through the crowd without looking back. I didn't look at Gerald. I didn't look at Pamela. And I sure as hell didn't look at Kyle. In the parking lot, my mom tried to smooth it over the way she always did. She patted my arm and said, "It's okay, baby. I've heard worse." That sentence, that one sentence, gutted me more than anything Gerald said. Because it meant she had spent her whole life absorbing these moments, cataloging them, filing them away under normal. The guests who talked about her like she wasn't in the room. The managers who ripped apart her work and made her redo it. People who left dirty messes as if she were less than human. She'd heard worse, and she said it like she was comforting me. I cried the whole drive home. My mom didn't. She sat in the passenger seat with her camera in her lap, looking out the window and said, Don't let them take this day from you. But they already had. I parked in front of our apartment, turned off the engine, and sat in the silence. Something was forming in me. Not a plan yet, just a line. A line that had finally been crossed. Kyle called 3 days later. I'd been waiting to see how long it would take. 3 days. That told me everything. "Hey," he said. His voice had that careful, pre-rehearsed tone. "Listen, about graduation, my dad didn't mean it like that. You know how he is. He's old school. He says things without thinking. He thought about it plenty, Kyle." He waited until my mother was standing right there. Silence. I could hear him breathing. "Did you say anything to him after we left?" I asked. "Did you tell him it was wrong?" More silence. I told him it wasn't cool. Not cool. I almost laughed. "Your father told my mother she smells like bleach in front of a crowd of people. And your mother suggested she wait in the car. And the best you came up with was not cool. Morgan, what do you want me to do? He's my father and she's my mother." I looked at the ring on my finger, 2 months of Kyle's salary. The diamond was small but real. I had loved this ring. I had loved what it meant. "I waited 3 years for you to stand up, Kyle. Not for me. For my mother. You never did. Not once. You're overreacting." "No, I'm finally reacting." I slipped the ring off. It left a faint tan line on my finger, pale against the rest of my skin. I set it on the kitchen counter. "I'll leave the ring in your mailbox, Morgan. Goodbye, Kyle." I hung up. The apartment was quiet. My mom was at work at the Greystone, of course, cleaning someone else's mess. I stood in the kitchen alone and had no idea what was coming next. But I knew one thing. Wherever I was going, I was done being quiet. Let me pause here for a second. If you've ever had someone you love sit in silence while people tore down the person who raised you, you know what that quiet drive home feels like. And if you're wondering whether I just walked away and moved on, I didn't. What comes next took me 10 years, but I need you here for it. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe and drop a comment. Tell me, has anyone ever disrespected your mother to your face? Because I want to know I'm not alone in this. Okay, let's keep going. After Kyle, things got small. My world shrank to the size of that apartment. I lost him. And with him, I lost the entire social circle that came attached to the Ashford name. The dinner invitations, the weekend barbecues, the couples trips. I was never fully welcome anyway. It was like being cut from a team I'd been benched on the whole time. I moved back in with my mom. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't push. She just made chicken soup the night I showed up with 2 suitcases and set an extra place at the table like she'd been expecting me. That first week, I did nothing. I sat on the couch, scrolled through job listings, and tried to figure out who I was without Kyle Ashford's last name on my horizon. Then I saw an opening. Entry-level analyst at a commercial real estate firm. Small office, low pay, long hours. I almost scrolled past it, but something about the job description snagged me. Evaluate undervalued properties for acquisition and repositioning. I didn't fully understand what that meant yet, but the word undervalued stuck. I knew what it felt like to be undervalued. I applied. I interviewed in a borrowed blazer. I got the job. $29,000 a year plus a parking spot. My mom drove me to my first day. We sat in the parking lot and she looked at the building, this squat, unremarkable office next to a tire shop, and said, "Looks like a start." That's the thing about my mom. She never oversold anything. She never said, "You're going to be amazing," or "This is your destiny." She said what was true. It looked like a start. And it was. What I found in those late nights, spreadsheets open, coffee cold, calculator running, surprised me. I was good at this. Small towns have long memories and loud mouths. Within a month, everyone who mattered and plenty who didn't knew that Morgan Bowen had been let go by the Ashford boy. That's how they framed it. Not that I'd left, but that I'd been released like a fish too small to keep. Gerald made sure of it. A friend of mine who waitressed at the country club told me he'd been holding court at the bar after his Saturday golf round, drink in hand, saying, "The girl actually thought a maid's daughter could walk into our family." Kyle dodged a bullet. He said it to a table of 6. Got repeated to a table of 12. By Monday, half the town had some version of the story. My mom heard it too. She had to. She walked through the Greystone every day, past guests who golfed with Gerald, past managers who attended the same church. No one said anything to her face. They didn't have to. She could feel it, the way conversations would dip when she entered a room, the way smiles would tighten. She never brought it up, not once. She just kept showing up at 5 a.m., pulling on her uniform, clipping her name badge, and pushing her cart down the same hallways she'd pushed it down for 3 decades. The worst part wasn't the gossip. It was finding out through that same waitress friend that Gerald was already lining up Kyle with the daughter of a business partner. A better match, apparently. Someone with the right last name and the right zip code. I sat with that information for about 10 seconds. Then I closed my laptop, went to bed, and got up the next morning to go to work. Gerald Ashford could talk all he wanted. I had numbers to run. Daniel Kessler walked into my life 6 months after I started at the firm. He was a real estate attorney who handled closings for our deals. Mid-40s, sharp jaw, sharper suits, and the kind of calm that made you trust him before he even opened his mouth. He noticed my work before he noticed me. I'd put together an acquisition analysis on a strip of retail properties off Route 9, and apparently it landed on his desk by accident. He called my boss to ask who wrote it. My boss pointed at me. Daniel showed up at my cubicle on a Tuesday afternoon, leaned against the partition, crossed his arms, and said, "You wrote the Route 9 breakdown." "Yes, sir. It's good. Your cap rate assumptions are conservative, which means you actually think instead of guess." He paused. "What do you want out of this?" Nobody had ever asked me that. Not what position I wanted, not what salary, what I wanted. "I want to own things," I said, "not clean them." Came out before I could filter it. I braced for a reaction, pity, awkwardness, something. He just nodded. "Then learn the numbers. Everything else is noise." From that point on, Daniel became my mentor. Not in the hand-holding motivational poster way, in the way that mattered. He gave me work that was too hard for me and expected me to figure it out. He showed me how deals were structured, how financing worked, how to read a seller's bluff. He answered my questions with more questions. One afternoon, he mentioned offhandedly that the commercial real estate market in our area was shifting. "There are properties around here that are undervalued," he said, tapping his pen on a valuation report. "Give it time. The right deal will show up." I didn't know how right he was. Around the same time, my mom started moving differently, slower. She'd wince getting out of a chair. She'd grip the stair railing with both hands like it was the only thing between her and the floor. 30 years of standing on tile, 30 years of bending, lifting, kneeling, pushing a loaded cart over carpet and around corners. Her body was keeping a running tab. And the bill had finally arrived. Her doctor, a kind woman at the community health center, because my mom didn't have the kind of insurance that got you into specialist offices, told her the cartilage in both knees was nearly gone. Her lower back had 2 bulging discs. She needed to reduce her workload. Ideally, stop. How am I supposed to stop? My mom asked me that night, sitting on the couch with ice packs on both knees. I don't have enough saved. I don't have a pension. If I stop, we lose the apartment. I sat across from her and watched her wrap athletic tape around her knee, the same way she did every morning before work, like she was suiting up for battle. She'd been doing this for years. I just hadn't been paying attention. "Mom, you're not going to do this forever." "I'll do it as long as I need to. That's what I'm telling you. You won't need to for much longer." She looked at me like I'd said something in a language she didn't speak. She didn't argue. She just shrugged and picked up the remote. That night, I sat at my desk until 2 a.m. reviewing every property listing in a 50-mile radius. I wasn't browsing. I was hunting. My mom had given me 30 years. I needed to move faster, and the market was about to give me the chance. My first real deal fell apart on a Thursday afternoon in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee. It was a small office building off the interstate, ugly, underpriced, full of potential. I put together a proposal, found an investor willing to go in with me, and walked into the bank feeling like I had a chance. The loan officer was polite. He read my proposal, nodded a few times, then pushed it back across the table. Insufficient track record. 3 words. That was it. I didn't have enough history. I was 24 years old with a good analysis and no resume to back it up. The door was there. I just didn't have the key. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. Then I called my mom. She picked up on the second ring. She was on break. I could hear the ice machine humming in the background. I got turned down, I said. Good. I blinked. Good. Now you know what the door looks like. Next time you'll find the window. I laughed. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks. My mom had a way of boiling everything down to something you could actually hold on to. I hung up and sat there a little longer. The building across the street had a for lease sign in the window. The strip mall next to it was half empty. I started doing the math in my head without even meaning to. 2 days later, Daniel called. I've got an investor who's been looking for a joint venture partner on a retail repositioning. You interested? I was in his office within the hour. The first failure had done what failures do. Taught me where the edges were and how to get past them. The deal was a strip mall on the east side of town. 10 units, half vacant, roof leaking, parking lot cracked like a dried riverbed. The owner was an out-of-state landlord who hadn't set foot on the property in 2 years. It was listed at a price that made experienced investors walk past. I saw something different. I spent 3 weeks running numbers, renovation costs, tenant profiles, lease rates for comparable properties within a 20-mile radius. Then I presented the analysis to Daniel's investor, a retired contractor named Ed Hartwell, who wore flannel to meetings and made decisions based on math, not ego. Ed looked at my spreadsheet, scratched his chin, and said, "You really think you can fill these units in 18 months? I think I can fill them in 12. I was wrong. Took 9. I managed the renovation myself, not swinging hammers but hiring the crews, negotiating with subcontractors, keeping the timeline tight. I walked that property every morning before work, checking on progress the way my mom checked rooms at the Greystone. Thorough. Relentless. When the final tenant signed, the property was worth 40% more than what we'd paid. Ed got his return. I got mine, and I reinvested every dollar. My mom came with me to the strip mall one afternoon just to see it. She walked through the parking lot, now smooth and freshly striped, and looked at the new signage on the storefronts. She didn't say, "I'm proud of you," or "You did it." She said something better. "You look like someone who owns something." 3 more deals followed, each bigger than the last. But there was one property I kept watching, one listing I checked every month like a heartbeat that wasn't for sale yet. I'd been tracking the Greystone in for 3 years before it ever hit the market. Not emotionally, financially. I watched its occupancy rates drop. I watched the online reviews slide from 4 stars to 3. I noticed when they stopped hosting the Chamber of Commerce dinner. I noticed when the landscaping went from manicured to good enough. The owner, a man named Arthur Conley, mid-70s, was tired. His wife had passed. His kids lived in other states and didn't want the headache. Property taxes were climbing. The building needed a new roof and updated plumbing, and the revenue wasn't keeping up. I ran the numbers quietly. Location excellent. Square footage, right for a boutique renovation. Comparable sales in the region put the value somewhere between 7 and 9 million, depending on the condition assessment. With the right renovation plan and repositioning strategy, the upside was significant. Daniel noticed me pulling Greystone data one evening and said, "That property is a textbook turnaround opportunity. Location alone is worth the price." I nodded. I didn't tell him why I was really watching it. Not yet. Because there was another number I couldn't stop thinking about. Room 312. Third floor, end of the hall, farthest from the elevator. The room my mom always saved for last because it was the hardest to reach with a full cart. She'd cleaned that room more times than I'd eaten dinner. And she was still cleaning it every single day. At night, I'd sit at my desk with two screens open, one showing the Greystone's financial data, the other showing my mom's medical bills. Two columns that told the same story from different angles. Something had to give, and I was almost ready to be the one who made it give. When the Greystone finally came to market, I was ready. Arthur Conley listed it at $8.5 million through a commercial brokerage. I'd been underwriting the property in my head for 3 years. I knew the real number. I put together the proposal in one weekend. Renovation plan, projected cash flows, tenant retention strategy, 5-year capital expenditure forecast. Every page backed by data I'd been collecting since before I had the right to collect it. I sat across from Ed Hartwell and 2 other investors I'd brought on over the years. They reviewed the package. Pointed at the acquisition price, $8.2 million, a full $300,000 below asking. "You think he'll take it?" Ed asked. "He wants out. His kids don't want the building. We close fast, no contingencies, and he gets a clean exit. He'll take it." The investors agreed. The deal had legs. The math worked. This wasn't emotion. This was a textbook commercial acquisition. But there was one conversation I'd been putting off. That evening, I met Daniel at his office after hours. I told him something I'd never said out loud before. My mother has cleaned rooms in that hotel for 30 years. He set down his pen. He didn't speak for about 10 seconds. Then he said quietly, "Then let's make sure she never has to again." That night I called my mom. I didn't tell her what I was doing. I just asked one question. "Mom, do you trust me?" She paused. "Always have." "Then trust me a little longer." The offer went in on a Tuesday. The seller countered once. We held firm. By Friday, we had a signed purchase agreement. I sat in my car in the parking lot of Daniel's office holding the contract, and I cried for the second time in 10 years. Closing day felt like standing at the edge of a cliff and choosing to jump. The wire transfer went through at 10:47 a.m. $8.2 million. The deed transferred. Keys were mine. I drove to the Greystone alone that afternoon. I didn't bring anyone. I didn't celebrate. I just wanted to walk through it. The lobby looked the same. Marble floors, copper fixtures, that piano in the corner still gathering dust. The front desk was empty. It was the gap between checkout and check-in. Quiet hour when housekeeping owned the building. I walked up the staircase to the second floor, past the supply closet that stuck in summer, past rooms my mother had cleaned 10,000 times. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and starch. The smell of her work. The smell of my childhood. I climbed to the 3rd floor, room 312, end of the hall. The door was propped open. The bed was freshly made. Tight corners, no wrinkles. The bathroom was spotless. On the card outside, I saw the clipboard with the room inspection checklist. Next to "inspected by" was familiar handwriting, M. Bowen. I sat on the edge of that bed and pressed my hands against the mattress. The springs gave slightly. This mattress was old. Carpet was worn near the door. Curtain rod was slightly bent. My mother had been making this bed for longer than some marriages last. I pulled up the employee records on my laptop. Under Employee of the Month and Lifetime Awards, Maria Bowen had been selected 11 times in 30 years, more than anyone else on the list. 11 small plaques on a corkboard in a break room that no guest ever entered. I closed the laptop and sat there in my mother's last room. I let myself feel all of it. I didn't want to just slap my name on the building and call it a day. Anyone with money can buy a hotel. I wanted to build something that would outlast the transaction. Over the next 2 months, I put together a plan with 3 parts. First, a bronze plaque in the main lobby, permanently mounted with an inscription that read, "In honor of the housekeeping staff of the Greystone Inn, your hands built the comfort others enjoyed." Not tucked away in a hallway, not in the break room. In the lobby, right next to the front desk where every guest would see it. Second, an employee wellness center on the ground floor. Free physical therapy, free counseling, free basic medical screenings. Open to every hotel employee, full-time or part-time. It would be named the Maria Bowen Center. Third, a charitable foundation attached to the property, funding scholarships for children of hospitality workers. The honorary chairwoman of that foundation would be Maria Bowen. I contacted the local TV station not to brag but because I wanted the story told. A reporter named Jenna Malloy called me back within an hour. When I explained the situation, daughter buys hotel where her mother worked as a maid for 30 years, she went quiet. "Is this real?" she asked. "Every word. We'll be there." And Morgan, this might go bigger than local. I invited every current and former employee of the Greystone Inn. I invited local business owners. I invited the mayor's office. The ceremony would be in the lobby, the same lobby my mother had walked through invisible for 3 decades. I did not invite the Ashfords. I didn't need to. That's the thing about local news. Everyone watches. Everyone. The hardest part wasn't buying the hotel. It wasn't planning the ceremony. It was telling my mother. I picked her up on a Saturday morning and told her I needed her help checking something at the Greystone. She didn't question it. She put on her sneakers, the ones with the worn-out soles she refused to replace, and got in the car. When we walked into the lobby, she headed straight for the housekeeping closet. Muscle memory. 30 years of turning left at the front desk, grabbing a cart, and disappearing into the service corridors. "Mom, stop." She turned around. "Come here." I walked her to the wall next to the front desk. Plaque was already mounted, covered with a cloth. I pulled the cloth off. She read it. Then she read it again. Her lips moved over the words like she was tasting each one. Her hand came up and touched the bronze, tracing the letters. "What is this?" she said. "I bought this hotel, Mom." She stared at me. "What?" "The Greystone. It's mine. And this wellness center," I pointed to the sign on the door to the left of the lobby, "is named after you." She didn't move. She just stood there, her fingertips still on the plaque, and I could see her processing it. The woman who had cleaned this building for 30 years, standing in the lobby she'd walked through invisible, reading her own name on the wall. Then she broke. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. She just leaned forward, pressed her forehead against the plaque, and cried quietly like she'd been saving it. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. I put my arm around her. "I know. But you deserved it 30 years ago." She couldn't look at me. She just kept touching the letters of her name. The week before the ceremony, the Greystone transformed. Fresh flowers in the lobby. A small stage set up near the fireplace. 2 rows of chairs facing it with a center aisle for the cameras. Banners printed in navy and gold, the hotel's original colors, framing the entrance. I spent every day there checking details the way my mother had taught me to check rooms. Every angle, every surface, nothing overlooked. The biggest surprise was my mom. The day before the event, I took her to pick up a new outfit, a tailored navy blazer, white silk blouse, gray slacks. She stood in front of the dressing room mirror and didn't recognize herself. I watched her touch the lapel of the blazer, running her fingers over the fabric the way she used to inspect thread counts on hotel sheets. "This is too much," she said. "It's exactly right." She looked at me in the mirror. She didn't argue. Former Greystone employees started calling all week. Some I tracked down through old HR records. Others heard through the grapevine. A woman named Dolores, who'd worked housekeeping alongside my mom for 15 years, left a voicemail in tears. "Maria deserves this," she said. "She always did." Daniel stopped by the Greystone the evening before the ceremony. He stood in the lobby, looked at the plaque, looked at the stage, and said, "This is the best deal you've ever done. And I'm not talking about the numbers." That night, Jenna Malloy from the TV station called. "Just a heads up," she said. "This might go beyond local. A daughter buying the hotel where her mother was a maid for 30 years. That's the kind of story the national outlets pick up." I hung up and looked out the window. Town was quiet. It wouldn't be for long. The night before the ceremony, I called my mom. She answered on the first ring, which meant she'd been sitting by the phone. She'd never admit it, but I could tell she was nervous. Maria Bowen had spent her whole life behind the scenes. Tomorrow she'd be front and center. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Like I might throw up." I laughed. "You're going to be fine." "Morgan, I don't know how to give a speech." "I don't know how to give a speech." "I push a cart." "That's what I know." "Mom, tomorrow you walk through that lobby as chairwoman, not as staff, not pushing a cart, not checking someone else's work. You walk through those doors and you sit in the front row and you let people look at you. That's all you have to do." She was quiet for a long time, then said softly, "I've walked through that lobby 10,000 times. This will be the first time I don't have to carry a mop." I pressed the phone against my ear and closed my eyes. There it was, 30 years compressed into a single sentence. "This is the phone call, Mom. The one that matters." "I know, baby." After I hung up, I stood at the window of my office, the office I'd earned in the building I owned, and looked out at the town. The streets were dark. The Greystone sign glowed down the block, warm and amber, the way it had glowed my whole life. Tomorrow the cameras would roll. Tomorrow my mother's name would be on national television. Tomorrow everyone in this town would know the woman they'd walked past for 3 decades. And somewhere on a couch in a house with a long driveway, a man who once said my mother smelled like bleach would be watching. We're almost there. Tomorrow is the ceremony, and I need to ask you something. If your mother had spent her whole life being invisible to the people around her, and you had the chance to put her name on something permanent, something the whole town would see, what would you choose? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And hit that like button, because what comes next is the moment I've been building toward for 10 years. Don't go anywhere. The morning of the ceremony, the sky was clear and the light came through the Greystone's lobby windows in long golden columns, hitting the marble floor like spotlights. By 9 a.m., the lobby was filling up. 150 chairs and people were already standing along the walls. I recognized faces. Former housekeepers, maintenance staff who'd worked alongside my mom for decades, local business owners. The mayor's office sent a representative. Jenna Malloy's camera crew was setting up in the corner. 2 cameras, boom mic, lighting rig. A second crew from a digital news outlet had shown up uninvited. Jenna waved them in. The more the better. Then my mom walked in. She came through the front doors. Not the service entrance, not the staff hallway. The front doors. In her navy blazer and white blouse, hair styled, shoulders back. She looked like a different person. No, she looked like the same person, finally seen. The room went quiet for half a beat. Then Dolores, her old coworker, stationed in the second row, stood up and started clapping. Spread. Within seconds, the entire lobby was applauding. Camera operators swung around to capture it. My mom stopped just inside the doorway, overwhelmed, gripping her small handbag with both hands. I walked to her, took her arm, and walked her down the center aisle to the front row, the same aisle guests used to walk while she pressed herself against the wall with her cart. She sat down, looked around at the stage, the flowers, the cameras, the plaque on the wall. Then she looked at me. "This is really happening," she whispered. "This is really happening." I squeezed her hand and walked up to the microphone. The lobby was full, the cameras were live, and the speech I was about to give wasn't written for Gerald Ashford, but I knew he'd hear every word. I adjusted the microphone. The room settled. Jenna's camera had a small red light. It was on. 30 years ago, a young woman walked into this hotel and asked for a job. She didn't have a degree. She didn't have connections. She didn't have anyone to call in a favor. She had a daughter to feed and a willingness to work harder than anyone in the room. I looked at my mom. She was sitting with her hands folded in her lap, staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between terror and pride. Her name is Maria Bowen. And for 30 years, she cleaned rooms in this building, 10 to 15 rooms a day. She scrubbed bathroom tile until her knuckles cracked. She made beds until her back gave out. She pushed a loaded cart up and down these hallways 6 days a week, 50 weeks a year for 3 decades. The lobby was silent. Jenna's camera operator moved slowly along the side aisle. She was named Employee of the Month 11 times, more than anyone else in the history of this hotel. 11 plaques hanging on a corkboard in a break room that no guest ever entered. She earned every single one, and she earned them in silence. I paused. In the second row, Dolores had her hand over her mouth. A man I recognized as a former maintenance supervisor was blinking hard. Maria, my mother, was looking at her hands. Most of the people in this room have stayed in hotels. You've slept on clean sheets. You've used fresh towels. You've walked into a room that smelled like someone cared. But you probably never thought about the person who made it that way. I let that sit. The room was still. Today, we're going to think about her. I walked to the wall next to the front desk. Plaque was still there from when I'd shown my mom, polished bronze mounted at eye level where every guest would see it walking in. This plaque reads, "In honor of the housekeeping staff of the Greystone Inn, your hands built the comfort others enjoyed." It's not in a hallway. It's not in the break room. It's right here in the lobby because that's where it belongs. Crowd applauded. Cameras flashed from the news crew. I turned to the left side of the lobby where a set of glass doors had been installed during the renovation. Behind these doors is a brand new employee wellness center. Free physical therapy, free counseling, free medical screenings open to every employee of this hotel, full-time or part-time, current or former. I took a breath. It is named the Maria Bowen Center. My mom's head came up. She looked at the doors. She looked at her name etched into the glass panel above them. Her chin trembled. "Mom, could you come up here?" She didn't move at first. Dolores put a hand on her back and whispered something. My mom stood up slowly, the way she always did now because of her knees, and walked to the stage. The entire room rose, 150 people on their feet. The applause was loud and sustained. My mom stood next to me, staring out at the crowd, tears running down her face without a sound. I put my arm around her. "Mom, you spent 30 years making sure other people had a clean place to rest. Now it's your turn." She pressed her face into my shoulder. Cameras kept rolling. Dolores was openly sobbing. The room didn't sit down for a full minute. When the room finally settled, I stepped back to the microphone. My mom stayed beside me, holding my hand. I could feel her pulse through her palm, fast, steady, alive. "I want to say one more thing." I looked out over the crowd, the cameras, the faces, the people who had known my mother and the people who were meeting her for the first time. There were people along the way who made my mother feel small. I'm not going to name them. That's not what today is about. I paused. Jenna's camera was close. I could see the red light reflected in the lens. But I'll say this. The measure of a person is not what they own. It's not the size of their house or the name on their business card. It's how they treat the people who serve them. Person who cleans your room. person who bags your groceries, person who holds the door open when your hands are full. My mom squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. My mother was never less than anyone in this room. She was more because she showed up every single day for 30 years and never once asked for recognition. She didn't do it for a plaque or a title. She did it because her daughter needed shoes and school supplies and a chance. The room was gone, tears everywhere. A man in the back, I later found out he was a retired hotel manager from the next county, took off his glasses and pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. This hotel is no longer just a business. It's a reminder that the people who clean your room, who wash your sheets, who show up before dawn and leave after dark, they matter. They always did. The room erupted in a standing ovation. My mom gripped my hand and didn't let go. After the speech, the lobby turned into something I hadn't planned for, a reunion. Former housekeepers surrounded my mom like she was a magnet. Women she'd worked alongside for years, some she hadn't seen since they left the Greystone a decade ago. They hugged her. They held her hands. A woman named Rosie, who'd started the same year my mom did, grabbed her by the shoulders and said, "We always knew you deserved better, Maria." Every single one of us. My mom just kept nodding and wiping her eyes and saying, "Thank you." "Thank you." Jenna Malloy pulled me aside. Her camera operator was already rolling. She had that look reporters get when they know they're holding something bigger than a local segment. "Morgan, do you mind if we do a quick interview, both of you?" We stood side by side in front of the plaque. Jenna asked my mom how she felt. My mom looked into the camera, this woman who had never been on television, who had never been asked for her opinion by anyone with a microphone, and said, "I cleaned rooms so my daughter could have choices. I never expected one of those choices would be this." Jenna's eyes were wet. She kept her composure, barely. After the interview, she pulled me aside again. "This is airing tonight at 6, but Morgan, I've already had a call from a national producer. AP is picking it up. This is going way beyond our market." I thanked her. I walked back to my mom, who was now sitting in one of the leather chairs by the fireplace, the chairs she'd dusted for 30 years and never once sat in. She was just sitting there quietly, looking at the lobby like she was seeing it for the first time. And maybe she was. I didn't see what happened next, but I heard about it from 3 different people within 24 hours, so I'm fairly confident in the details. Gerald Ashford was sitting in his living room that evening. He'd been retired for about 18 months, not by choice. His construction company had lost its biggest municipal contract when the county shifted vendors. And without that anchor, the smaller jobs dried up. He wasn't broke. He still had the house, the car, the club membership. But the phone had stopped ringing. The dinner invitations had thinned. He was a man who used to fill a room, and now the room was mostly empty. Pamela was in the kitchen when the 6 o'clock news came on. Gerald was half watching the way retired people watch TV, with one eye and no real interest. Then the anchor said something that made him sit up. A local woman's incredible gift to her mother is making national headlines tonight. The screen cut to the Greystone lobby, the plaque, the stage, the crowd, and then Morgan Bowen standing at the microphone. Maria Bowen standing beside her daughter with tears on her face. Gerald watched the entire segment without moving. He heard the part about the housekeeping plaque. He heard the part about the wellness center named after Maria. He heard the part where the reporter mentioned, without using names, a cruel remark about bleach made at a graduation ceremony years ago. No names, but this was a small town. It wouldn't take long. Pamela came in from the kitchen holding a dish towel. She saw the screen. She saw the Greystone. She saw Maria's face. She looked at Gerald. He didn't look back. The segment ended. The anchor moved on to weather. Gerald picked up the remote, turned off the TV, and sat in the dark. Nobody needed to say a word. Cal called me 2 days after the broadcast. I almost didn't answer. My phone had been ringing nonstop. Reporters, investors, strangers from across the country who'd seen the story online. But his name popped up and I paused. Then I picked up. I saw the news. His voice was different, older, quieter. Careful, rehearsed quality was gone. He just sounded tired. Most people did, I said. Morgan, he stopped, started again. I should have said something that day at graduation. I should have stood up to my father. I've known that for 10 years and I never said it. And I'm saying it now because I don't want to carry it anymore. I leaned back in my chair. Through the office window, I could see the Greystone's roofline down the block. I appreciate you saying that, Kyle. My dad hasn't spoken since the broadcast. Not to me, not to my mom. He just sits there. That's between him and his conscience. Yeah. He exhaled. Yeah, I guess it is. A pause. Then you did something incredible, Morgan. I did something necessary. I know. Another pause. I'm sorry for all of it. I believe you. And I did. I believed he was sorry. But sorry doesn't rewind the clock. Sorry doesn't unsay what his father said. Sorry doesn't give my mother back the 30 years of being invisible. Take care of yourself, Kyle. You too, Morgan. I hung up. Call lasted maybe 4 minutes. There was nothing else to say. No door to reopen, no bridge to rebuild. He had his life. I had mine. And the distance between them was exactly right. I set the phone down and went back to work. There was a quarterly foundation meeting to prepare for. Chairwoman would be there. Here's what happened after. By the numbers, because numbers don't lie and feelings don't pay the bills. The story aired locally on Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, AP had picked it up. By Thursday, it was on 3 national morning shows. My phone didn't stop ringing for 2 weeks. The Maria Bowen Foundation received over $200,000 in donations in the first 7 days. Most were small, $10, $20, $50 from people who wrote notes like, "My mother was a housekeeper, too." And this made me call my mom. A hotel chain in Texas donated $25,000 and asked to replicate the Employee Wellness Center model. The Greystone Inn sold out for the entire quarter. Occupancy hit 96%. People were booking rooms specifically because of the story. They wanted to stay at the hotel, see the plaque, visit the Maria Bowen Center. Revenue was up 60% over the previous year. Gerald Ashford's world contracted. His golf buddies started finding reasons to skip their Saturday round. The country club board, people he'd sat with for decades, quietly suggested he take a break from attending events. Nobody confronted him. They just stopped including him. He learned what it felt like to be invisible. He didn't lose his house. He didn't go bankrupt. This wasn't that kind of story. He just lost the thing he valued most. His standing, his voice in the room, the assumption that he mattered more than the people who served him. And my mom, Maria Bowen, employee number 4471, 30 years of service, officially retired with full health coverage through the foundation and a modest pension. She attended quarterly board meetings as honorary chairwoman, wearing the navy blazer she now kept pressed and ready in her closet. Her knees still hurt, but she didn't have to kneel anymore. A few weeks after the ceremony, I came to the Greystone early, before the staff arrived, before the lobby filled with guests checking in and out. Just me and the building. I stood by the plaque, ran my fingers over the bronze letters the way my mom had done the first time she saw it. The lobby was quiet, sun coming through the windows. That same marble floor my mother had mopped 1,000 mornings. I thought about the girl I was 10 years ago, 22, sitting in a car in a parking lot, crying in her graduation gown while her mother, the bravest person she'd ever known, told her not to let them ruin the day. That girl didn't have a plan. She didn't have money. She had a line that had been crossed and a feeling in her chest that said, "Never again." She didn't know it then, but that was the start of everything. Not the humiliation, not Gerald's words, the decision, the moment she chose to stop absorbing and start building. I didn't buy this hotel to prove anything to Gerald Ashford. I didn't buy it to humiliate him or get revenge or settle a score. I bought it so my mother could finally sit in the lobby so her name could be on the wall instead of on a work schedule. So the next woman who pushes a cart through this hallway knows that someone sees her. That's not revenge. That's recognition. My mom doesn't call it vindication. She doesn't use words like that. Last Sunday, we had breakfast together at the Greystone restaurant, something we do every week now. She ordered pancakes and coffee. When she was done, she pushed her plate forward, leaned back, and smiled. She didn't have to clear the table. She just sat there in the lobby in the light, and she belonged. So here's what I'll leave you with. If someone tells you that the people you love aren't good enough, that's not a reflection of your family. That's a confession from theirs. Tells you exactly who they are and exactly how small their world is. My mother smelled like bleach because she worked harder in one day than Gerald Ashford worked in a year. She smelled like bleach because she spent her mornings scrubbing bathrooms so I could spend mine in a classroom. She smelled like bleach because she chose me every single morning for 30 years. And she never once complained. And now her name is on the wall of the building she cleaned. Not because I'm rich. Not because I wanted to show off. 'Cause she earned it. She earned it with her hands and her knees and her silence and her stubborn, unbreakable belief that her daughter would do something worth all of it. I have a rule now. I don't let anyone sit at my table who can't respect the people who serve it. That's a hard line. Costs me some relationships, but the ones that remain are the ones worth keeping. My mom taught me that, not with a speech but with 30 years of showing up. If you have someone in your life who did that for you, a mother, a father, a grandmother, an aunt, anyone who worked their hands raw so you could have more, call them right now. Tell them you see what they did. Tell them it mattered. And if you want this comment section to be a wall of honor just like the one in my lobby, drop their name below. Tell me who they are. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. There are more stories like this in the description below. And remember, the people who clean the room are the ones holding the whole building up.